So the different flint tools, and they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. We'll go through some of the more common ones. So this is what we would call a microlith, or perhaps a microblade, bladelet. And these are much smaller pieces of flint that have been struck off a core, a blade core, which has usually been specially prepared just for the purpose of producing little blades like this. And the idea is that they are long and very thin, and so they conform slightly to what we might imagine a knife or a scalpel blade to be today. So you can see that the edges are very thin, razor thin, and they're very useful in that instance for slicing motions, for scraping motions, and they can be hafted fairly easily, where you would glue it to the interior of something like an arrow shaft, or a knife edge, or a sickle if you're moving into the Neolithic with farming. And so they're quite a multifunctional tool. You often find that they've been extracted from tools previously and then reused, and they can be modified in all sorts of ways. So one edge can be blunted or rounded, while the other edge remains sharp. So that's one set of tools. Another might be these slightly smaller but very heavily modified biface tools. So these are different types of bifaces which have been worked into small axes and points. So you can see this is more clearly of an axe shape, as well as something like this. So the principle with those is that a much bigger piece of flint has been worked down on both sides, and so you can see that on both sides of it, it's got the scars and the dips where pieces have been removed. And the idea then that if you hold it in profile, that it's quite thin, it hasn't got lots of extra weight that you wouldn't really want on it, and that way they're useful for things like hafting, for small axe work, small carpentry work, or perhaps thinning out even further into things like arrows or spearheads. And then we have much longer and larger pieces. These might be more associated with Upper Paleolithic. So this is where a much bigger piece of flint, a much bigger core has been prepared for removing, and it's essentially the same principle as with the microliths, except on a much bigger scale. So these would be much more useful for butchering perhaps a much larger animal. And you can see that again it's got very sharp both sides, and that the top here is where it's been struck off, and then the shockwave has gone down and it's detached it there from the bottom. There we go.